here this morning. At the beginning, I would like to ask the President of the University, Fayad, to welcome all participants.
Your Excellency, Bundeskanzlerin, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear JGU students, Guten Morgen. We are honored and privileged to have Chancellor Dr. Angela Merkel at GGU with us today. We are thankful that you could save the time to come to visit GGU. This young university has been established upon an agreement between our two countries in 2005. Since then, the university, which is based upon the German Applied Science Universities model, has created a success story in Jordan and in the region. The number of our students now is 4,300. It is obligatory that each single student in the undergraduate level has to spend 1 year in Germany, half a year at one of our 110 partner universities, and the other half year do an internship in one of the industries related to the students' specializations. For the time being, we have about 800 students in Germany. JGU was able to establish strategic partnerships with German educational and industrial partners. It was able to establish many academic programs in the bachelor and master levels. We have now 26 bachelor programs and 9 in the master level. The most recent programs came as a response to the Syrian crisis, Master of Social Work / Refugees, and we are implementing an EU-funded program for education of Syrian and underprivileged Jordanians from the host community. In this program, we have about 1,500 students in different specializations and different levels. Some of them actually have already graduated this semester, about 200. The university offers an excellent example of transnational education, which makes it different from all other institutions in the area. Besides education, our university is acting as a lighthouse in higher education in Jordan and the region, and also a center of international communication between Germany, and the rest of Europe. Finally, we are thankful to the Jordanian and German organizations that facilitate our work. Among these, Ministry of Higher Education in Jordan, Federal German Ministry of Education and Research, German Federal Foreign Office, Deutsches Akademisches Austauschdienst, DAD, GIZ, Goethe Institute, KfW, and many others. Special thanks go to the Embassy of Germany in Jordan, to their invaluable support. Frau Dr. Chancellor, a warm welcome from myself, GGU staff, and GGU students. Welcome to GGU and welcome to Jordan. Herzlich willkommen.
Ja, liebe Frau Bundeskanzlerin, Sie sehen,
Madam Chancellor, you see that we have a packed audience here today, and this in spite of the holidays. I understand, yes, quiet in spite of the holidays. And believe me, we could have, beyond any doubt, filled 2 or 3 more auditoria. So there is a very great interest in you. There's a very great interest in Germany. We have a group of bachelor students, master students of all of the different faculties here, particularly natural sciences, according to the German Fachhochschule, among them also scholarship holders of the German Academic Exchange Service and of GIZ. I am very much looking forward to a lively debate here, and I believe all of our students are already waiting for you. I don't know whether you want to enter right into the discussion. Allow me, if I may, to say thank you for being here today with us. Good morning to all of you, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions, because for me, obviously, this is a very good opportunity to see where your interests lie, what you're interested in, and please do be open and candid with me. Thank you, dear students. Who of you would like to take the floor first? Who dares ask a question? Can only encourage you. Yes, maybe we start with the lady over there. Please remember to introduce yourself briefly with your name. Hello, ich bin Li Nim. I have just completed my studies in mechatronics, and my question to you is, since you have been in office ever since our university was established and have supported the establishment of this German-Jordanian University, what were your expectations connected to it, and what can we, students of German-Jordanian University, can do in order to render this project successful, also in the interest of Germany? Well, we believe, and I think this is something that we clearly illustrate with this project of the German-Jordanian University, that education is key to a better life, also to shape a better future for Jordan. And we believe that good education, skills, enables you to find good jobs. And so you yourself may share your knowledge with others and teach others. My delegation also comprises members of our German business community. You know, sometimes it's difficult for us to interest German investors for the Jordanian economy, because sometimes people are concerned that there may be too much bureaucracy or other obstacles in place. So we absolutely have to see to it that you, with your good education, with your skills, are able to get good jobs in either Jordanian companies or German companies. And if you are doing well, we too are doing well. We need stability all over the world. That's something that we've learned just recently, and that we'll continue to learn, that there may be events happening in some place of the world that have a very great impact on others living in totally different parts. So it's interesting for us and important for us for you to have a good future, and we would like to help you with this. Thank you very much. So it is certainly true that those who have left this school with a graduation, with a degree, are it's easy for them to find a job. So that's what the Chancellor was asking. Is it difficult for you to find a job here, or is it easy? It depends a little bit of the area and of the kind of job you're seeking, but I think if you're looking, for example, for a specific job, there are certainly more opportunities and more chances to get something than, for example, for students who have not spent a spell abroad. So the opportunities are actually better, chances are better for you. And what made you study mechatronics? Because in Germany it's difficult for us to find girls who wish to adopt technical studies. Actually, less than 30% of girls are interested in this kind of job. Well, I've always taken an interest in mechanics, in electronics, in also in data processing. So I was interested in studying mechatronics because everything's really in this. It comprises all of my interests, as it were. And I'd like to continue my master, to get my master's degree, and to perhaps also work a little bit in Germany, get more experience, and then come back to work in my own country and do something. Thank you. Well, then let's perhaps move over to another question or another contribution. Could other students perhaps ask for the floor? Perhaps the gentleman over on the left-hand side here. Good morning. I'm Zaid Arifai. I study mechanical engineering here. Most of us know that you have grown up in the GDR, that you were physics at the Central Institute of Physics and Chemistry. I would like to know why you entered politics and whether it was difficult for you to get this position that you currently hold. Well, why did I enter politics? Basically because in 1990 or 1989 in the GDR everything changed. You know that up until that moment we were a socialist country, so basically a dictatorship. What then happened was that well, people stood up for their freedom. They were protesting in the streets. It was a peaceful protest as well. And German unity came as a result. And I thought we don't want to see the same people in politics that we've seen in the dictatorship in politics. What we need are fresh faces, are new people, people who don't have an experience, obviously, but who were also critical as regards this former system. So new parties were formed. I then became a member of a new party that was called Democratic Awakening that later on merged with the CDU that also existed during GDR times, but it was basically a party that at the time depended on the party in leadership in the GDR. Later in West Germany, Helmut Kohl was the party chairman, also the chancellor of the CDU, and he shaped politics. And I was then interested to be part of that party family. I then was deputy spokesperson of the first freely elected government of the GDR. Then the unity came about, and I was family minister, was for a part a minister of the environment. Then later on, I became party. I was then leader of the opposition, and then became party chairperson, and then became chancellor. It was difficult in the beginning because you know that if you work in the realm of science, people expect you not to tell the same thing all over again, but that to come up with bright new ideas, to come up with new discoveries in research. And in politics, quite often you have to repeat the same things over and over again. So I had to get used to that. And in the beginning, I was actually unable to give long speeches. I am a little bit better at that now, but I've always enjoyed working with people. In the GDR, this wasn't possible for me, also because I was engaged in the Protestant church and the Lutheran church, and people didn't want, for example, us to become teachers or either at schools or universities who did not toe the party line. So I like this. I like going into politics. Thank you very much. Are there any further demands for the floor from students? Let's go on, maybe. Yes, the lady over there.
I'm Haya Hamasha, graduate from Renewable Energy Engineering from GJU and a founder of sustainable clothing brand in Jordan. From my position as a sustainable or green brand founder, I'm wondering if there are any coming support from Germany to innovation and sustainability, and in which field this support might be and which forms.
Well, we're trying to do quite a lot with development aid. I must admit that I don't know whether we are actually working on startups here in this country. I don't know whether Ms. Görner is present here as well. Oh, yes, over there. Maybe she can say something on what kind of projects we support here. We're doing quite a lot already in water treatment, for example, on renewables as well, because we believe that energy prices here in Jordan continue to be quite high because the system is not yet as efficient as it should be for many people who don't have the sort of money that demands. That is a big problem, and obviously water resources are very scarce, so sustainability in this area is particularly important. We're trying to work together with local authorities, trying to bring water management forward in this respect. Maybe somebody can give a microphone to Ms. Görner and she can comment on that briefly. There's no microphone, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Tanja Gunnar from the GIZ, Germany. We're here in Jordan at the German-Jordanian University. We're quite engaged, and particularly in the area of renewables, and also in the graduate studies on renewables. We've always tried to give support right now in the green, in the environmental area. We are actually working, but not that much in startups, because so far this has not been worked. One of our priorities were very strong in water management, but obviously when we give support to graduate study curricula here, we're always trying to find contact points here, find areas where we can give supports, but supporting startups is not one of our priorities right now. But I think it's always well worth our while to talk to our colleagues who work on renewables here in Jordan, to have exchanges with them, particularly to at least deal with, for example, management and also exchanges of business ideas. Maybe the local manager for Jordan and Lebanon can deal with this. I think you should be given her visitor's card so that you have a contact and to talk with them. Well, entrepreneurship, energy, water management is also one of our priorities here at the German-Jordanian University, so thank you. Are there many such startups here in Jordan? I believe we have a few representatives. Are there more here who have founded startups?
You raise your hands? Ja, verstehe.
Hello, Basham Al-Kawi is my name. Yes, I would like to answer this question. We have several students from Jordan that established startups, especially in cooperation with Germany. I myself established 2 companies, one of them solar energy company, and I'm working with B Electric in Germany. And regarding the question for the startup hubs, there is an impact program in cooperation with the German government, and I was enrolled with that. You can check the website for impact, and they are empowering youth from the region, especially Jordan, Egypt, and Tunisia. I have a question to Her Excellency, and I would like to ask about the cooperation between Jordan and Germany regarding the energy storage system. It is a challenge in the region, and if we can empower the resources in Jordan, we have the resources needed to generate batteries, and Germany they have the know-how to do that. And I would like to ask if we have planned to invest in the energy storage sector. Thank you.
Ja, also.
Well, whoever will find the answer to this problem of energy storage will rule the world, as it were, in that particular sector. Storage capacity is one of the crucial issues. We have a number of programs in Germany where we're trying, for example, in the connection with wind energy, which is our main source of renewable, at least for the time. It actually generates most of our renewable energy, to combine this with certain storage possibilities, both in batteries, but also, that's not so relevant for you, but sort of storage capacity in water, for example. There's a lot of technology already developed, so if you write to us, we can mention a number of possible partners and partner companies to you. Well, before we go too much in the details of energy generation, that is obviously a great challenge. Maybe a few other issues may be of interest to you. Good morning, I'm Mireille Wadam, and I study English and German for business and communication. And only recently, there was as you know, increases in taxes here in Amman, and people demonstrated severely against it. How would you deal with such a situation? Well, it did lead to a reshuffling of the government here, we understand. So obviously we also have protests against certain measures, maybe not recently so many, because right now we're in a very comfortable economic situation. But sometimes there are situations where I believe tough political decisions have to be taken. The question is, obviously, I'm not so familiar with the details. Was it a balanced tax increase, or did people have the impression that the wrong people are adversely affected by this? Because there are quite a number of people here who do not have so much money. And if, for example, subsidies are cut, it's very difficult for these people. In Germany, for example, when you have specific products such as bread or rents or electricity for households, and people will no longer then be able to afford this, then it's almost always better, instead of subsidizing each and everyone across the board, to only give subsidies to those people who are actually in need. So a needs-based program that can be introduced will calm the waters, as it were. Those who can afford it don't need support from the state. Those who earn more. Later on, I will hold political talks, and this issue, what actually made people rise up in protest, will also loom on the agenda. Now, I understand that there is a project of a new tax reform which may perhaps be more equitable and fairer, but here obviously people demonstrated because they felt that this was not fair, this previous tax scheme, and when those who are poor feel they are too much affected, too adversely affected, then I feel one needs to correct a course as a politician. Thank you very much. Please, in the first row. Ich gucke gleich mal.
Rams Witan. Ich studiere Biomedizintechnik.
Hello, I'm Rams Witan. I study biomedics, and should we, as Arab students who are going to study at some point in time in Germany, should we be afraid of this rise of an AfD presence in the Bundestag, but also the ensuing wave of racism? And where do you see the reasons for this development and also for the success of AfD? I believe that, on the whole, you need not be afraid. Obviously, I cannot exclude that you may have sometimes people who may make disparaging remarks. That can happen, I suppose, everywhere. On the whole, I would say Germany continues to be a safe country, although there have been instances where foreign citizens were attacked, migrants were attacked, but there have also been instances where refugees unfortunately murdered young girls. So we've had cases of this kind. It may also be that that people in Germany are afraid now because of that of young Muslim males or young Arab males. But I do think that on the whole, people will look at you, will be open-minded, and will, let's say, looking at you objectively. And AfD has become so strong, first and foremost, because of the crisis of the euro, of our common currency in Europe. Later on, there was an increase in voters for AfD because of the controversial debates we had over the flow of refugees to our countries, where people would argue, was this really necessary? I think in a difficult humanitarian situation, we try to give help, but it is certainly true that we need to work on not giving these people either here in Jordan or in Lebanon into the hands of human traffickers, where in the end they risk their lives if they try to come to Europe. The way how to go about this, well, people find different answers to that. Then all of that is lumped together with other problems that we have, where people feel we haven't been given satisfactory solutions to this. For example, what about rural areas and the provision of doctors in those rural areas? What happens to me when I get older? who looks after me, because the families are no longer as closely knit as they are perhaps in your country. And all of that is lumped together. So these are very basic issues, and I always come down on the side of those, and thank God that's the majority of our country, who argue we ought to be an open country. Obviously, we have to manage this flow. We have to control it in some way, but particularly you as students who come to our country, we like to train you, and we hope that you will find that you are welcome to our country as we are welcome in your country. So on the whole, you need not be concerned. It's interesting how this feeling of security and safety has changed, because 5 years ago, of those who wanted to come from Germany to this country here, we were asked by our colleagues who wanted to come here as university teachers whether they were safe here. And now all of a sudden, the reverse seems to be the case. Well, in the first row, if you could.
If you could pass the mic to the gentleman, please.
My name is Hussam Al Khreysat. I want to welcome you one more time here to Jordan and to GGU. I currently finished studying industrial engineering, but I'm more interested in politics. And I had the privilege to witness the election process in Germany last year. And I had so many German friends, and they were actually somehow upset from the results of the elections because of the high percentage that the AfD party accomplished during the elections. In my point of view, I witnessed that the media and the propaganda during the elections focused more somehow into the negative side of accepting refugees, which is a very sensitive topic at that moment during the elections. Is there somehow the German government has some control or some power over the propaganda to actually even between the pros and cons between showing the advantages or disadvantages of accepting refugees to your country and Europe in general? Thank you.
Ja, wir sind natürlich ein Land.
Well, we are a country that has freedom of the press, and where basically the government doesn't really control the media in any way. Due to the social media on the internet, while you do have the phenomenon that people get their information also from different sources, and exchanges take place in quite different fora than previously, we as a government obviously have tried to shape the way that we appear in the social media, and 3 times a week we have a governmental press conference, and we are trying to convey an objective image of what's actually happening. There are statistics, for example, about crimes, where we can say, well, crime generally is declining, but we can also very specifically say in which areas we still have problems. It's never a black and white situation, basically, in life. You can obviously always say, well, one can only address the negative things, but one can also send positive messages. For example, every Syrian refugee already has some kind of job. So we are trying to highlight this in order to render the overall image, the overall impression a little bit more objectively. But negative news tend to spread faster than positive news. That's, I think, true the world over, and that's why it's so important to also talk about positive news, but not deny negative issues, because then people have the impression they're trying to hide something from that. So I think one should be as objectively as possible in one's communication. And basically, as a politician, I would always say, if somebody has a question, a journalist or anyone, each and every question ought to be responded to. You ought to have a reply ready, and you should not shirk your responsibility of giving answers. It's part and parcel of working as a politician.
Frage bitte der.
We move on to the next question, the gentleman on the right side. My name is Sabila Ralai. I am also a graduate of this university, and at present I head up a small department at Deutsche Bahn in Frankfurt. We all know that in Jordan and Amman there are about 4 million people, of which 1 million refugees. And they are really a strain on the transport infrastructure, our transport infrastructure in Amman is not so strong or stable. And my question would be whether Germany has any projects that could help improve the situation in Amman, because we've seen that this university is a very successful project that has helped us all, and I'm wondering whether there are other projects that would branch out to the transport system, for instance. Well, the problem here is that this would actually have to be initiated by the Jordanian side, because I can't do transport planning for Jordan, but if the mayor of Amman, for instance, were to contact us and were to ask what we could do to cooperate on improving the transport infrastructure in Amman or in Jordan, then I'm confident that we would find people who would actually be willing to be prepared in this. And I think in my business delegation, for instance, I have a representative of a major planning office that would be able to do this. But of course, we would need some specifications. Would you like to have buses or an underground, or what kind of transport infrastructure would you like? And of course, these decisions have to be taken, these basic decisions have to be taken in the country itself. And then the next step is to discuss financing. I'll be having political talks today, and one of the things that we'll be discussing will be not particularly the transport system, but the power system, the electricity system, because we see that there's a major problem, and at the same time we also see that there's a possibility of actually improving this system by a large margin with not that much investment. And if the government were to be willing to actually work with Germany on this, then we'll be very happy to do so. Of course, we can engage in development assistance, and that is important, but of course the real breakthrough is when you actually manage to attract private industry to the country, and this of course depends on a stable framework and perhaps more transparency as well. So my dream would actually be to have a direct underground connection between Amman and this university. Oh, I can well imagine that. Yes, but at the same time, if you look at the landscape, you see that there's a lot of hills, and it's probably not easy to build an underground here. But what do you do to come here? How do you travel here? Well, there are buses, there are bus shuttle services for the students as well, and also there are many people who use their cars, unfortunately. We have a question from the gentleman right beside. Good morning, my name is Mohammed Rahim. I study technology and I'm in my last year. My question is the following. What is your cabinet planning to do to help graduates enter the German job market? The federal government is planning to adopt an immigration act because there is a lack of skilled labor for technology-related jobs, software development, engineering, and so forth. So we have major demand for these subjects, for these qualifications, and this would make it possible for people to enter the job market. We also have the European Blue Card, which means that if you find a job that gives you a salary above a certain threshold, you can apply to travel to Germany to get a work visa here. Thank you very much. Over here. And if you are interested in additional information, I'm sure you can contact the German embassy and they'll help you. Good morning, my name is Alia. I'm currently studying translation at GJU. What do you study? Translation. Arabic, German, and English. And my question is the following. I understand that President Putin tends to run 3 to 4 hours late to meetings in order to demonstrate his strength. But in contrast, you are known for being very punctual. So what do you do when you know that he's probably be late? Well, I have to say that's not always the case. I went to Sochi and I have to say everything went pretty much on time and on schedule. Yes, he's known to be late sometimes, but well, what am I supposed to do? I wait. Well, that's a clear answer. And sometimes it means you don't have that much time to actually, for the meeting itself. The gentleman wearing the tie. Thank you very much. Hello, Madam Chancellor. My name is Professor Habali. I study mechanical engineering in the 10th semester, and I also work for a company in Augsburg. And my question to you is, what's your view on the fact that more and more German states are making it, or more and more countries and also states in Germany are introducing fees, which is actually making it difficult for people to access higher education. Baden-Württemberg, for instance, has recently introduced fees for foreign students. No, for students who wishing to do a bachelor's or master's degree. No, we don't have tuition fees. But in Baden-Württemberg, well, maybe if you go to a private university for foreign students. Yeah, oh, yes. For people who are not on an exchange program. Well, I don't think that there are that many German states that have introduced tuition fees for foreign students. But if I'm correctly informed, then you also have to pay for your tuition here. So in that case, it means that things are not entirely different. But perhaps the situation was more attractive when you were able to study for free. I don't think that the intention is to actually bar people from entering higher education. To be honest, I don't really know the details of the law in Baden-Württemberg to this on this effect. But well, the question is quite surprising, I would say, because tuition fees are so much higher here in Jordan than the rather low tuition fees that we have in Germany. So I think there is no major threat. Well, we're seeing these very different developments. On the one hand, there are many students who say, well, if Germany is offering higher education for free, then it can't be any good. And some elite students choose not to go to Germany because they think that a university that is not charging for tuition can't be a good university because that's what they've experienced elsewhere. And then there are others. And then there's also the other point. You could say, well, others are doing the same, and what can we do to actually improve the education levels? But I can assure you it's not to bar foreign students from coming to Germany. I think a better course would actually be for Jordan to reduce its tuition fees, because that would actually help with access to education. So all universities charge tuition fees? Yes, the state-run universities as well. Yeah, we'll at least have a good scholarship system in place. In Germany, we have support for benefits for students whose parents don't earn that much. It's called BAföG. So we want to ensure that not only children of parents who can afford to send them to university can access higher education. And in the old days, when we had tuition fees in some German states, there were also loans for students, very low interest loans, that made it possible for students to actually go to university, and they had to repay this loan only after graduating. And of course, once you're a university graduate, you're very likely to be able to repay your loan because you find a job easily. But I think there should be systems or schemes like that. That's very desirable in order to ensure that people from all strata can have access to good education. Most certainly. Well, there are schemes like that in Jordan, but I think they could be improved further. Welcome. My name is Lubna Razi. I study economic engineering, and my question to you is the following. What is your advice to young people in Jordan? What advice? Okay, that's a rather difficult question. Well, I would start by saying that in addition to engaging in your studies, you should work towards building a strong future for Jordan, for building a society that is able to overcome its challenges. You're fortunate in that you have a very good education, and many people don't have access to this level of education, and this is why I would advise you to contact people who don't have this many opportunities and to support them, to perhaps encourage them to do what's best for their lives. And also, I would encourage you to study hard so that you can have good opportunities for new jobs. And sometimes students might even think about engaging in politics, perhaps, environmental protection, for instance, resources, because in your country, water management is a major issue, electrical supply. We will also have to look at waste, plastic waste especially. So it would be good to actually work towards a more sustainable Jordan that has a bright future, and to actually believe in the future of this country despite the problems, the major problems that you're facing. Well, plastic bags and plastic waste is omnipresent here. Well, we saw this when we came here, and those of you who are engaged in sustainable clothing or sustainable resource management should think very hard about how to replace these plastic wrappings, because that is a massive problem for the oceans as well. Well, of course, we like the fact that you pointed out to students that that they should study hard. Well, that, of course, is the essential thing, but I think they probably do. Oh, yes, of course, of course.
Ja, natürlich.
There's a question by a gentleman sitting in the same row.
Mahmoud, Master of Social Work. I would like to ask you, from your experience, how can the civil society organizations, including women groups, strengthen the conflict resolution and peace-building mechanisms that aim to reduce violence during conflict?
Ja,
well, in Germany, we've fared very well by training social workers. So if it's possible, and that of course depends on financial resources, you should have social workers based at schools, perhaps when there are conflicts, for instance, between refugee children and local children. So it would be good to have social workers present. It's also good to ensure that that there are possibilities for young people to do things in the afternoons, for instance. Sports clubs. I think one of the most successful peace-building measures is to have children, not only boys, but also girls, play football. We've seen that this has a very good success, a very high success rate. And it's also not that expensive to have a football pitch. It's important to be close to where the people are, and it's also important to invite groups that are opposed to each other to engage in talks. Sometimes that can be difficult, but it's worthwhile, and you should really build trust. And the way to do that is to do things together, cook together, play sports together, perhaps help other people together, because these are ways of actually getting to know each other and to overcoming conflict. From your point of view, where do you think the main sources of conflict in Jordan, if you look at young people especially?
Maybe the violence in the camps between children and violence in schools, or domestic violence. But actually, I was asking about the Syrian context, maybe after the next 5 years.
Ach so.
I'm Syrian.
Ach so, ja, über Syrien.
Oh, Syria.
Ach so, ja, über Syrien, ja.
Well, the situation is very difficult because many people have left Syria. And we are now having to look for a political solution that will work for all Syrians, because there are many people in Syria who are Sunni who've left the country, and we now have to make sure that the political solution of the future will not result in a situation whereby these people are saying we can never go back home. So it's not only about establishing peace, it's also about political transformation. And in the case of Syria, there are many external powers that are taking care of Syria. And there are two groups, basically, that are working on conflict resolution. On the one hand, there's Russia, Iran, and Turkey. They have formed the Astana group. And then there's the second group that brings together Jordan, the US, France, Britain, and Germany, and Saudi Arabia. And the objective now must be to work with de Mistura, the UN official, to make sure that these two groups that have very different objectives develop a joint agenda which will then help bring the transformation process forward. And this would include that President Assad would have to appoint people in charge of amending the constitution. This would also mean encouraging members of the Syrian opposition. But at present, it's looking like there won't be peace from Syria itself unless the external powers that are not Syrians work together and don't work against each other in different directions. It's highly difficult and very complicated. Well, of course, Syria is an important issue here because it's our neighboring state. We need to make sure that there aren't any final facts being created, and I talked about this with President Putin. I think there's the Marzin Pact, and Syrian civilians have to declare a decree, and Syrians have to declare their property, and that of course is very difficult for people who've left the country, and this is why we are working very hard to ensure that this decree is not put into practice, because otherwise it's very difficult for people to return to Syria, which would be a very bad message to people who want to come back to Syria. I would like to point out that this is a student who's studying in social work. That's a new degree, and we're working with German universities of applied sciences. So it's a very new program for the region. We have the gentleman in front.
Pass the mic directly, please.
And then the two women. For 13 years, you've been working with this university has been standing for cooperation between Jordan and Germany. What has Germany gained from this cooperation? Well, our impression is that it's all going very well here. So we're seeing that this is really a recipe for success. Of course, we ask how many students apply, how many applicants you have, and apparently the numbers outpace the number of places that are actually available. And we think that this university is a very good project. And now that I'm here, I have the same impression. So, of course, we're not doing this mainly to benefit Germany. Perhaps some of you can come and work in Germany sometime, but we're mainly doing this so that Jordan has a good supply of skilled labor. And, of course, it would be good news if more German companies came to invest here, and if they were able to recruit from a labor pool that had more people here who know German and who know about German culture. But we're not mainly doing this to benefit ourselves. We think that this really helps stabilize Jordan, which in turn benefits us. Because otherwise everybody would want to come to Germany, and we want people to feel at ease at home. I'm also delighted to see that there are so many girls at this university which focuses on technical degrees. I think this is a wonderful thing, and this is why I'd like to ask you to pass on the microphone to the women sitting in front of you. We have more than 50% women among our students.
I am studying spatial planning at JJU. So I would like to ask you, what are the major issues that should be considered to rebuild and redevelop the Syrian cities, the destructive Syrian cities, according to the German experience after the Second World War? Thank you very much.
Ja, wir sind
Well, at present, Germany is very careful about about engaging in reconstruction at present, because there's no final solution to the problem. Right now, we are helping with military support, but at first you need a political transformation or have that in sight. What we have learned from the post-war period in Germany, well, we did not have a master plan for planning. We knew the basic structure of our cities, and we tried to actually stick to that basic structure. Some cities were completely destroyed, and sometimes the first generation of buildings built after that weren't particularly beautiful, and then sometimes people were not so happy with the results, and then they tried to reconstruct historical buildings. But I think what's very important is that you start by rebuilding the infrastructure. This is for the government to do. And when it comes to rebuilding property, there will also be private initiatives. And these initiatives have to have freedom to develop. So in Germany, we've learned that if you have a specific question, for instance, how to insulate buildings against heat, for instance, that you should provide tax incentives. So if there were to be a large wave of reconstruction, you would have to find an investment scheme that convinces investors to invest, because the state or the government can't do this alone. They can't rebuild Syria alone, if I look at Aleppo, for instance, or other cities. Because the population will be very interested in actually doing their own handiwork. This was similar in Germany, but at the same time, business also needs to feel that they can actually get involved. Would you like to?
It's Hanin Bersa. I'm Syrian. I'm a master student of conservation in architecture conservation. I'm very honored to meet you today. The German women will be always the positive role and model who successfully resurrected her country after the war and rebuilt their country. And you are the best example of the German women. And my dream is to be like you and to have a success and influence on the society and the world. Would you please give us some advices to how to plan and to build our successful future? So we are, as a student of conservation and the Syrian, and we're supposed to be a master in conservation and preservation of our country in the future. So I need from you some advices to just open our minded to the next stage of the world. Thank you.
Ja, also.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start by saying that I'm delighted that there are more than 50% women at this university, so it's good to have strong education. And the next point is to see how you can actually reconcile your private life and your professional lives. I personally don't have children, but many women in Germany have children, and I'm sure that you are also wishing to combine a career and a family. And it's important to have an infrastructure for this, kindergarten, daycare. But at the same time, it's also important that young men should also help or lend a hand. And I don't know how this works in Germany, in Jordan. In Germany, we have a law that specifies that if parents have a child, then the parents can one parent can stay at home for 12 months and will receive a certain percentage of their salary. It's usually the father. But if the father also stays at home for a period of time, then this 12-month period is extended to a 14-month period. And this has really changed the situation in Germany. There's a growing number of fathers willing to stay at home at least for 2 months, sometimes even longer, and in some cases women earn more than men. And when fathers take care of their young children, then business also don't know beforehand whether a young man or a young woman will stay at home, which makes it more likely for a young woman to get a job, because a young man might also stay at home. And this is another step towards progress. There are also many people who wish to work not 100%, but want to work part-time or stay at home 1 day a week. And a lot has changed in Germany because this is a major topic for Germans, this combining a career and a family. It's the rush hour of your life. Young people have to build a career, raise their children. In some cases, they also have to nurse their parents. And this is a time when you have to do all things at the same time, and it's important to share the work. And if you're then offered the next step on the career ladder or a management position, then women sometimes tend to be a bit careful and question themselves. But you should be courageous, because men usually tend to think, oh, I'll be able to do it. And not in all cases are they really able to do a better job. So be confident, even if you don't have that much experience yet. And others will follow suit. I think that at present you only have 70 days in Jordan, and men can take 3 days off in exceptional conditions. So that's a major difference. Well, Germany hasn't had this for a long time, but I was asked about a good way for the future, and this is one thing. We also have daycare at the university for babies, and it's being taken up very well. The lady with the long hair. Good morning. Hallo Uhamba.
Guten Morgen. This is Hala. I'm a student in the Master of Architectural Conservation, and actually got the fund from the German Federal Office, Foreign Office. It's really a pleasure to have gotten this chance as a Jordanian and a Syrian and Iraqi refugees. As a group, is there any idea that we can encourage us to continue a higher education on what we began in the masters, to make more research on the Jordanian and international heritage, and get more benefit as we already have at the moment?
Okay, das müssen wir mal aufnehmen.
Well, we have to take this up on our list, in our work. It's an important point, because this kind of heritage protection is very important. Listed buildings are important. And in fast-growing areas, you also have to protect the heritage that you have, but at the same time, our development policy needs to focus on forward-looking issues, because there are many young people who want to have a bright future. and I'll see what opportunities we have. But it's good that you're interested in your cultural heritage.
Zerstört worden von
And unfortunately, in the war in Syria, so much was destroyed, which was such important cultural heritage. IS, for example, has destroyed and great monuments, has brought great devastation. And I think a lot of people here in this area feel that they've lost so much of their valuable heritage. And once when Syria is rebuilt, we will certainly stand to lend a helping hand, and also later on when rebuilding starts in the whole of the region. But Germany cannot do this on its own. We need to concentrate in our cooperation also on the future, but I think it's a very important issue, certainly. Because when you have more, it's actually more arms raised than less. The lady with the red headscarf over there, she has asked for the floor for such a long time.
Hello, I'm a master's student of social work, refugees, and immigration. My question is about the reunification law. As you know, there is a lot of families, they are waiting to be reunited again with their families. My question is, what is your next strategy? What is your next plans? What are, as a really strong decision maker? So what is your next, what you are planning, what you are up to? Thank you.
Naja, wir haben das gerade in Deutschland.
Well, we've just discussed this in Germany. As you know, once a refugee is recognized as a refugee and according to the Geneva Convention and has given official status as somebody who has fled from a civil war, then there is a legal title also to the family reunification. And this, however, concentrates only on the core family, that is to say, direct relatives in the sense of actually the parents and the siblings. And then there's a subsidiary protection. If you, for example, have someone who hasn't directly fled from a civil war, has found sanctuary, for example, already in Lebanon or in Jordan, where his life or her life wasn't really threatened, then it's more difficult to be reunited with your family. There's no legal title to that. We decided to accept per month 1,000 family members, but to limit the number so that first and foremost we can maintain this legal claim for refugees under the Geneva Convention, and that this can be implemented. You can well imagine that is a great challenge to Germany as well. Once a family is there, obviously it's good for the stability of the person who is already in our country, but we also need sufficient housing. In many cities we have scarcity in the housing sector. Many of the refugees have a tendency of, going to the cities, to the larger conurbations, because they want to be reunited, for example, with other members of their ethnic community, but they don't like to go so much to the rural areas. But you know, the conflict, you're familiar with this conflict here from Jordan. Our own citizens too have their own concerns, their anxieties, and we have to try and strike an equitable balance here. Do you have 10 hours more, Chancellor? Because as I can see, there's a great interest. It's rather more 10 minutes, I think. Maybe over there, that corner there, the first row. I have the impression that after every question, there are more people who ask for the floor. So what do you learn? Well, when you actually enter into a debate, you raise your arm at in the very first minutes, so you get a chance to ask your question. Hello, I'm Barash Shamrouch. I am actually a graduate of the German-Jordanian University. I work in the digital area. I'm an entrepreneur. And Germany, I know, is strong in technology, digitalization. You yourself wish to bring this forward and have positioned yourself well. How can this digital transformation be actually integrated into the society so as to render it as efficient as possible? Well, we're actually working on this very hard, and Germany isn't unfortunately all that well positioned. We have a good administration, but that tends to be also, in a way, a hindrance in seeing to it that particularly the administration is digitalized. You may leapfrog that development, for example, by by providing immediate access to citizens to administrative services via the internet. Each and everyone, I believe, has a smartphone, so your health system can be organized much better in this way. In Europe, for example, one of the top countries, or the top country, is probably Estonia. I don't know whether you know Estonia and the Estonian history. Estonia is really all the way up there, and if in Jordan you wish to digitalize your society, I think you should get into contact with such a highly developed country in this particular sector. I mean, Jordan is a comparatively smaller country, so you stand perhaps a better chance than bigger countries to do that. So systemically, this should be immediately brought into a way where you have a future-oriented digital structure. I would advise you to get into contact with the Estonians and to get maybe good advice from them. I see one of our German exchange students here. I am Felicitas Maschke. I am an exchange student here at the GJU. I would like to thank you very much for showing such a high degree of humanity, and I know that you have come under fire for this, under flag. Today you will also pay a visit to Azraq, to the Bundeswehr. In this coalition, the Syrian base of Atan is, well, there are Americans deployed, American forces deployed, and there's this Rukbak camp where thousands of refugees, Syrian refugees, are held under very severe conditions. Are you familiar with Rukban, this camp, and do you intend to end this situation of the refugees there very quickly? I must say that I do not know this camp. I've heard of it, but I will get to know, will get familiarize myself with this situation. Obviously, American troops are participating in this anti-IS mission that they are deployed there. I think basically is good, is right. There is a broad-based international coalition engaged in the anti-IS mission, but obviously the refugees should not suffer under this. So if you feel that humanitarian assistance there is necessary, then I would gladly look into the matter. Obviously, we have a number of really extremely tragic situations there. I mean, just look at Idlib, look at Aleppo, look at the southern region of Jordan, along the border with Syria. The situation there is extremely difficult. We try to help. In many cases, it's tragic to see the underfunding of UN agencies and organizations. We've tried to fill those gaps, but I do feel that others need to step up to the plate and do more here. Then there's another question directly before that, I believe.
I'm a social work student, and I'm also an employee in a private sector. So my question to you is, in your opinion, what are some positive steps a private sector can do in order to improve the refugees' life equality, or like building their infrastructure, or empowering the refugees in general?
Ja, ich glaube, das gilt ja gleichermaßen.
I think the same applies to the Jordanian citizens and to Jordan youth as it does for the refugees. Because we have to see to it that there are not conflicts springing up between the local population and the refugees. I've heard from from previous comments that obviously if there are more refugees, then infrastructure will suffer. Then there's going to be they're going to encroach on your territory, maybe take housing away from you, take services away from you, so you may get into a difficult situation. Internationally speaking, we have agreed a few years ago, the Jordan Jordan compact, so trying to establish certain specific economic areas where we try to give incentives in order to create more jobs, more investments in those zones. I will try to get a briefing today about how this works, take some stock. Europe sometimes has a hard time of becoming engaged in this. I think we ought to, for example, refrain from imposing too high tariffs on textile products, for example, that are produced in such specific zones. We have a number of European countries, obviously, that produce cotton, Spain, Portugal. They're somewhat reticent in allowing others exports, for example, an export from Jordan to Europe. The same goes in certain instances for the food industry. So we as Europeans, I think, have to create fairer conditions so that economic life businesses in this particular area can actually develop, because obviously Jordan as a market isn't big enough. So access to European markets is of the essence. Do we have time for one further question? One. Or maybe you want to say something, or you want to ask questions to the students that might. But then we take, well, I would say, because there are so many demands for the floor, if I usually ask to combine my answers with a question also. This gentleman over there, who you have asked for the floor for quite some time. Hello, I'm Karim Jatanavi. I am a German with a Jordanian migration background. As one of my previous speakers, I would like to also thank you for the efforts you have made on behalf of Syrian refugees. My question is as follows. According to statistics, in Jordan, people usually have about 70 liters of drinking water per day on average. Obviously, water that is used up in public buildings is also part of this statistics. 400 liters are used up on average in Europe. The WHO proposes a minimum of 120 provided to people per day. Do you intend, or rather would you make an effort to see to it that the supply of drinking water and also the right to drinking water is shaped in a different way? For example, the comparison was between Israel and Jordan. Well, that is obviously a question related to good neighborly relations. We believe that in Jordan you can probably do a little bit more as regards improving efficiency of water management, and we would like to help you in this in our development cooperation. I must admit, from a political point of view, do you have a discussion, a debate here with Israel? Because we have always enjoined on partners to see to it that a fair management of water supplies provided by rivers, for example. We know that we have the same problem with the Nile, Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia. There's a great conflict potential, and wars may well arise from that. So I think we have this phenomenon there as well. So a fair and equitable balance has to be struck. That's certainly true. One single question as the last one. Whether you want to select a person. Let's take a girl or female student. I'll take you. No, sorry, I've been behind. With the headscarf or the long hair? The long hair.
Aber es ist jetzt das.
But it's nothing against all of the others who. It's simply an impossibility when you see 30 arms that are sort of ask for the question. I'm Sina Salem. I study pharmaceuticals and engineering here at the university. So one question. How can students in Jordan and the world over be motivated to study in Germany? How you can motivate them? Well, I think The numbers are fairly high as regards foreign students studying in Germany. We are actually asking a question in reverse. We have to provide more studies in English, in the English language, because we simply cannot start from the assumption that everyone knows German. Let me say, I'm very impressed of your language ability and mastery of the German language. But I think one also has to, in order to be competitive in this world of today, be able to offer studies in the English language. Germany, I can only tell you, is a great country. We offer good education, and you have to pay considerably less than at other universities all over the world. So we believe we have a good model, and don't think if you don't have to pay anything, our education system is worse. No, it's quite good all over the country. Obviously, there are top universities, but basically we have a very broad-based secondary education, university education. You can see that with your partner schools, and I think quality is more than acceptable, and I think you can also spread the message on this. Obviously, we have an interest in having many foreign students, because we know whoever has at some point in time studied in Germany feels a bond to our country, knows the language, knows the culture. No matter what happens to that person in a later life, he or she will later on remember that well, basically, and that creates good ties between countries, good relations, even if you're back in your home country after that. Thank you. That's unfortunately, we have to call it a day. I have to leave. Protocol is already standing there back next to me. So all the best to you. I hope that you will have good experiences when you're on an exchange program in Germany. I hope that you will be able to benefit from what you've learned here, make your life a better life here in your country, in Moravigil. So this project, I think, is indeed one that is a testimony to the very close bonds between our two countries, Jordan and Germany, and thank all of the members of your faculty, and the best of success in your own life. Thank you.